the big story coming out of there, because no surprise that the Bills beat the Jets, was that Zach Wilson finally got benched in the game. They put in Tim Boyle, and we'll get into Tim Boyle. But he came in for Zach mercifully, came in for Zach Wilson in the second half. Wasn't much better. In fact, he was worse. But going into the game Friday, they are now going to start Tim Boyle. And Zach Wilson has actually been demoted, Rob, to third string. And you remember the dude, Stevel. How you say his name? Rob G. Streveler? Yes, Streveler will be the backup. And Rob, just quickly, these are the numbers. Zach Wilson was 7 for 15, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. A nice fat passer rating of 57.9. Now, you laugh when I say nice and fat, but it was compared to Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle, 7 for 14, 33 yards. 33 yards. That's 2.5. That's not even 2.5 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, 1 pick. He had a passer rating of 26.5. So this is a mess of mammoth proportions, Rob, but that's where the Jets are right now.
Chris, let me get the floor. You know I grew up in New York, right? I grew up in Jamaica, Queens.
As a Jets fan, probably,
and
right?
I grew up as a Jets fan. And I used to, I don't pull for teams, okay? I'm a reporter. I have been for almost 40 years. But I grew up as a Jets fan. I used to take the Q42 and the E train and the number 7 train to Shea Stadium, Chris, when they played there. And I would not, when I was in high school, would not work on Sundays at the mall. Anybody who worked at the shoe store had to work on Sunday except Rob Parker.
At Buster Brown.
Stride right. My mom would let me leave church early so I could get the kickoff. She would, Chris.
No wonder.
She would go, Mom, can I go?
Look at him now.
She would look at me and go like, Go ahead, you can leave early. So I was invested. I poured my heart and my soul out to this team when I was in high school. I remember crying my eyes out in college, Chris, when I turned on the game in the AFC Championship game and Don Shula didn't cover the field in that AFC Championship game against the Jets. The Jets had burners on that team, and the field was soaking wet. The Jets lost 14-0. A.J. Dewey had an interception against Richard Todd. Chris, that was it, 14-0. The Jets beat them twice during the regular season and was 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. And they lost. And now that brings me to this. You've heard me all season long, Chris, bellyache about how bad this franchise is. I told you they would wind up being the Mets. The same thing that happened to the Mets this year with all the expectations. The Mets signed Verlander. They're going to go to the World Series. The Jets went out and got Aaron Rodgers. I said it would wind up being the same Mets mess for the New York Jetropolitans, and I was right. The only thing worse, Chris, is that they knew this kid couldn't play. Zach Wilson. They knew it a year ago. Aaron Rodgers was hurt 4 plays into the season, and they ignored it. Go get a damn quarterback. I said it week after week after week. And now you're going to make a change? Chris, the Jets are the worst franchise in American sports right here, right now. The worst. Worse than the Detroit Lions. I don't care if the Jets won a Super Bowl in 1969. Guess what, Chris?
How they worse than the Detroit Lions? I'm
revoking that Super Bowl championship. You know what? If Joe Namath can't remember it, I can't remember it either. It is unbelievable what they've done. My God. Chris, this team is ridiculous. They have the longest non-playoff streak in the NFL. 12 years. 12 years, and they've had one winning season since the 2010-2011. The one winning season. They finished in last place in the AFC East, and I call it that, AFC East, in 7 of the last 9 years. They've had the bottom 5 offense, Chris, in each of the past 5 seasons, and a bottom 5 defense in 2 of the past 5 seasons. This season, that smell, that putrid smell you smell, is the Jets. They rank 29th in yards per play, 4.6. Poultry. 30th in total offense. 30th in passing. 32nd in red zone efficiency. And 30th in points per game. 15. There's nothing good about it. And the coach, the front office, the ownership, shame on you and all you Jets fans who tried to convince yourself and talk yourself into Zach Wilson. Oh, he's a man. He's improving this year. They got a great defense. All he had to do was just play and not hurt and not throw a turnover. And it'll be okay. Okay. It was never going to be okay. It wasn't okay last year. It wasn't okay this year. The Jets are tired, are stinky, are putrid. And they all deserve blame from top to bottom. That's why change the quarterback now, Chris? If you got this kid,
I agree.
Why?
This is a mess.
It doesn't make sense. It's too late.
The rest of the season, right. Here's the only thing. Look, a lot of that's well said. I know it's from the heart. I know it's personal. I know it hurts. But Rob Parker, I think when you sit down and examine the evidence, I think there are 2 franchises that I just think we have to admit. I mean, there's certainly an argument that they're worse than the Jets. And the first one you know all about, I don't even have to tell you, the Detroit Lions. I know everything's looking fine right now, but you know the history of this team, right? What is it?
One playoff win since 1957.
Yeah. So the Jets have topped that, all right? And they do have that Super Bowl. Or how long ago it was, the Lions haven't won a championship since the Super Bowl existed. They actually won a few championships before that. But the other one, Rob, and ironically, these are 2 of our hometown. You know, I got a few hometowns, but one of them is Cleveland. And the Browns, I think, have to be, I mean, there's an argument. There's an argument for the Browns to be worse than the Jets. The Browns, of course, never won a Super Bowl. Yeah, they won some championships with Jim Brown, but they've never won a Super Bowl. And Rob, check this out. You talk about the Jets, futility. The Browns have been in the playoffs 3 times in the last 33 years. 3. The Browns have 1 winning season. Now, this one might be the second, but 1 winning season since 2007. And, of course, the Browns became the only team to give a quarterback a fully guaranteed contract. And that quarterback turned out to be a guy with a shaky off-the-field history or circumstances now, and has been a shell of himself since he got to Cleveland on the field, and now he's hurt. So I think that obviously the Jets are horrific, but you and I have talked about it. You've pointed out some of the success they had with Rex Ryan and all that stuff. And so I think the Browns and the Lions give them a run for their money, or if not, actually outleg the Jets, Rob.
I'll say one thing. I'm taking the Browns out of the equation. They're an expansion team, Chris. They haven't been around that long. The Browns won 2 Super Bowls in Baltimore. That's who the Browns are.
That's not the Browns.
No, but the Browns
got their history.
But they've
Browns
only
have their history, Rob.
Chris, that is the Browns. That's the Browns franchise in Baltimore.
No, the Browns don't get to claim that history. The Browns have their own history.
How long have they been around since
No, they have the old history.
Chris, the franchise that's the Browns are in, and they're in
Rob,
Baltimore.
They are not an expansion. They have their old history. They do. I mean, that's just, they do. And so it's not that whole expansion thing. I know what you're saying. They did move to Baltimore, and you're right. Ironic. That makes it even worse. This team that's been horrific in Cleveland, the team moves to Baltimore and immediately becomes a contender and wins Super Bowls. But none of it is on the Browns' history, Cleveland's history. And Rob, heck, making it even worse, the guy who has won more Super Bowls than any head coach in history used to coach the Browns and was horrific with the Browns.